seconds here.
Last time, never mind. Last time you said that it was like 3 seconds before.
I know there's a
Call it-
lag on here, so it's hard for me to really tell.
It's like, thank God we didn't,
Yeah. Hi, welcome to the book club. This is something that we do the last Thursday of every month. And I am your host, Dana Morningstar. And today I have with me James,
Hi.
Shay, and Agata. So welcome, everybody. And the book that we are going to be discussing is the Self-Esteem Workbook by Glenn Schiraldi. It looks like this. It's a workbook, and we are changing it up a little bit. So this month, what we ended up doing was we divided the book up and we each took different sections. So we'll each be covering different sections. And while I am at it, real quick here, next month, we are going to be discussing the book, The Tao of Fully Feeling by Pete Walker. So if you've heard that, if that name sounds familiar, it's because he did the wonderful book on healing from CPTSD. And this book was a recommendation by Shay, and she absolutely loved it and said it was better than his CPTSD book, which is saying a lot because that book is fantastic. So make sure to join us next month into January, last Thursday of January. And let me get the date for you real quick. That will be actually January 31st. And 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for those that are interested. And then also really quick, I had two other things that I wanted to mention. If you're interested in following any of the books or any of the things that I recommend here on the website, I now have my own storefront on Amazon. So you can go to amazon.com/shop/thrive after abuse. And any purchases you make, at no extra cost to you, I get a small affiliate income from that. So it helps just keep doing what we're doing here. And then let's see, what else was I going to tell you? Oh, I wanted to also mention, this is kind of off topic, but maybe not really, books. If we are reading books that you like and you feel that they are really worthwhile, because this topic is so new and these books aren't as mainstream as I think we all feel that they should be, it can really be beneficial to call up your local library and ask them to carry these books. So just something to consider. It's a great way to kind of help get the word out. Okay, so we've got lots of people hopping on. So welcome. And I guess let's just hop into it. And okay, so I covered chapters 1 through 4. And so let me open these up here, and I'm just going to run through them. And so Shay, James, and Agata, if you guys want to hop in, feel free to hop in. Okay. So chapters 1 through 4 were focused on the building blocks of getting a healthy sense of self, basically getting enough sleep, eating right, exercise, as well as the importance of the mind-body connection and how self-esteem contributes to our overall health. And he talks about, I had never heard it phrased this way, but I really liked it, that basically a lack of self-esteem is also synonymous with self-dislike. And if we are disliking ourselves or we have a lack of self-esteem, he was saying it's known by some mental health professionals as an invisible handicap. And I thought that's very accurate, because if we lack self-esteem, it just negatively impacts everything in our life, the friendships we make, the jobs we choose, the relationships that we get into, our relationship with ourselves. It can cause us to get involved with all kinds of destructive or even self-destructive behavior. So I thought that was interesting. And he says each person already possesses some measure of self-esteem to build on. which I liked that. That's different from how Pia Melody views it, where she views it as you either have it or you don't. And I think I would agree with Glenn Schiraldi's perception of it, that we all have some things that we like about ourselves, some sort of degree of esteem, and we can always build upon it.
Dana, I think they use a little bit differently. They say an experience of self-esteem. Like
Glenn?
Here in this book, in the workbook we're doing, it's more like this is your experience of your self-esteem. So some of us have already some experience that you can kind of like get some point, because she later on she actually completely agrees with Pia that self-esteem is something that we are just born with and we all have it the same way.
Oh, okay. Well, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that, because I was really kind of going around about making sense of that.
Yeah, I think it's just a little bit different, but it's experience of it, so that's why.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And so he says, okay, well, what is self-esteem? Self-esteem is a realistic, appreciative opinion of oneself. Realistic means it's accurate and honest, and appreciative implies it's a positive feeling and that we like ourselves. Self-esteem is between, and he has this kind of spectrum where he says self-esteem is between self-defeating shame and self-defeating pride. And I really liked this distinction. So he says people with self-defeating pride are arrogant and narcissistic, which means that they think they are better and more important than others as a person. Their view of others is comparative, which is to say to be on top means that others must be below them. So it's a very competitive way of feeling good about ourselves as well as interacting in the world. And Pia Melody talks about this too, how if we're, healthy self-esteem it's not where it's coming from a greater than or less than position. And so that self-defeating pride, okay, so the self-defeating pride is more like narcissism. It's also rooted in insecurity, because normal healthy people, I should say, don't have that need to go around, putting everybody down so that they feel good about themselves. They have more of that attitude of, I'm okay, you're okay, kind of a thing. People with self-defeating shame also have this view of self-esteem where it's this very black and white view, except they view it as that they believe that they are less than human. So that self-defeating pride is a greater, like a power over position, and that self-defeating shame is a less than position. A person with the less than position holds an unrealistic and unappreciative opinion of themselves. And he also says self-esteem is not the same as selfishness. Self-consciousness, when we lack self-esteem, we are self-conscious. So we're in one of those two positions where it's either from a power over or we're feeling less than. In either way, we're incredibly self-conscious because our self-esteem is very dependent on our position with others. And he says, when we're feeling self-conscious, we are focused inward. And whereas healthy self-esteem allows us to be outwardly focused and to share ourselves from a secure base, because we're not needing to prove ourselves, we're not needing to compete with other people. And he also mentioned something about, and I like this distinction too, about if we're getting our self-esteem from outside of ourselves, from things that we achieve or people's opinions of us, that's others' esteem. That's not self-esteem. So self-esteem is something that comes from within, and it's not conditional based on how another person feels about us, which
Big
I really
game
like that.
changer. Yeah.
Let's see. And he also mentions healthy humility, which is knowing that we always have a lot to learn. And Agata, this was a conversation that you and I had the other day, or actually maybe it was in the notes that I had for the book. I loved that what you had said about that is,
I forgot, so you have to say it.
okay, yeah. Uh, well, you had mentioned something about shame and embarrassment.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, go hand in hand. Oftentimes when we're learning something new, especially when it comes to personal growth, and because as we're realizing these things about ourselves or the way that we're interacting with the world, it can be very easy to just be like, oh my gosh, how did I not realize this sooner? And oh my goodness, what have I done? And to feel it can really just rock a person's self relationship with yourself, and it can kind of create the shame spiral of thinking everybody else has it all figured out except me, and
That
what's
has
wrong
to
with
be
me.
true. That absolutely has to be true. I used to feel very crippled by that in certain areas of my life. And I find the more okay I am with just being wherever I am, the
Mhm.
less, the more accepting I am that it's okay to, if I goof up, well, okay, I'll learn from it, and figure out how to make it the best I can, and that's okay. And if other people, judge me for that, that's not mine to mess with, and it's okay. And the more grounded I get in that, brings exactly what you just said. I kind of feel like I've lived evidence of that, if that makes sense.
Oh
Yeah, it
yeah.
does a
I
lot.
think it has so much to do with getting a handle on that inner critic and just realizing it's okay. If I'm a mess today, that's okay.
Mhm.
It makes a
Yep.
difference.
Yeah. And we were talking a little bit about this last night in the live stream. And one of the big takeaways from that I got from Pia Melody, which I absolutely love, is she really talks about us having these three different selves. We have the wounded child, we have the critical parent, and then we have the kind of functional adult. And the wounded child, when we're that stuff surfaces all the time, but especially if we're learning something new, it can be really easy to internalize this. And if we make a mistake, instead of labeling it as the behavior, I made a mistake, we internalize it feeling like there's something wrong with me. I am stupid. I am incapable. And it
Then
can
you're
make us,
covering my chapter.
okay. I won't cover it too much then. But if we're coming from that functional adult place of, you know what, growth is all about change, and change is always difficult and it's always messy, and none of us have it all figured out. I mean, it's life, we're always growing and changing. So I'll touch on a few more points here and then I'll pass it over. But there was an exercise on page 16 about kind of getting clear on where your self-esteem is. And he has people, rank on a scale from 0 to 10, kind of, how do you feel about these different perceptions? Let me give you some more concrete examples than that. So some of the questions, actually, I'm sorry, I had this exercise confused. He asks some questions. So one of them is, where is your self-esteem lately? Low, medium, high, or you can rank it on a scale from 1 to 10. Another question is, how did your family of origin contribute to your self-esteem for good and bad? And what have you learned to do to increase your self-esteem? And then questions 4 and 5 were, what, if anything, can make you inferior as a person? And then what, if anything, can make you superior as a person? And then question number 6, I thought of you, Agata. This is so cool. He says, using an artistic medium, colored pens, paints, pencils, you name it, draw your opinion of yourself on a separate sheet of paper. There is something revealing and almost magical in expressing without words how you experience yourself. And I thought that is such a good exercise to do. And how powerful and telling would that be to also do with a child, to kind of see where they are. And So then he goes on to elaborate, which I also like this. He did quite a few of these deep dives. So there's these examples and then he goes a little bit deeper. And so he had mentioned, he says, okay, well, now that we've gone through these exercises and you've listed out what can make you feel better than another person and what can make you feel less than another person. He says, did you notice that the things that can raise your self-esteem can also be the same things that threaten it?
Mhm.
For example, if getting a raise at work lifts your self-esteem, well, then does failing to get a promotion cause your self-esteem to be lowered? If somebody gives you a compliment, does it raise your self-esteem? But then what happens if somebody insults you? And I like how he talked about this, because if we're placing our self-esteem outside of ourselves contingent upon the praise or criticism from others, it's an absolute emotional roller coaster. And I think a lot of us can relate to this. I know for me, when I was a teenager, it was very much this way. If I don't know, if a guy um, didn't like me or was interested in somebody else who didn't look anything like me, then I would internalize that and feel like there's something wrong with me, that I should look like her if I wanted to attract him, versus where I'm at now, where it's like, well, it's not everybody's going to be attracted to everybody, right? Like, it's okay for certain people to have preferences. That doesn't make me less attractive. It doesn't mean that I'm less of a person, or it doesn't impact me. That's their preference, and that's okay. So I guess kind of realizing, not letting rejection, not internalizing rejection was a big lesson learned over the years.
That's a
What do you
great,
guys think about that?
sorry, that's a great workbook to actually buy and do before you start dating. Like, if anyone here wants to date again, because like the most important thing for you is really to establish a really healthy relationship with yourself first, and that book actually gives you lots of exercises you can do. And I think like you will be way more grounded in your experience of your boundaries and self-worth, and dating comes with lots of rejection. I think you mentioned that yesterday, the live stream too. So instead of letting all that rejection get into you, you can actually still be grounded. I'm gonna cover later exercise about it, which is really cool too.
Okay, great, great. And let's see, there's another part I wanted to touch on where he talks about, okay, well, how do you build self-esteem, right? I think this is something that we all struggle with. And he says, self-esteem is based on 3 sequential factors: unconditional human worth, love, and growing, in that order. So without a secure base, any attempts at building self-esteem topple. And I really thought this was so incredibly insightful, because I've seen this time and time and time again in the support group, and it's something that's really stumped me for a long time, of like, what am I missing? How do I better get through to people? And so a lot of people, just like Agata was saying, this book is great if you're thinking about potentially dating again, because we do a lot of kind of education, and we work a lot on personal growth. But if we don't have those components of unconditional, we have value just because we're here on this planet. You have value. You're a living being and you're here. And to have that amount of self-love, if we can have all of the education about boundaries and standards and deal breakers and what narcissism is, and what codependency is, and what all of these different things are. But if we don't believe that we have worth, and we talked about this a little bit last night too, if we can't tell when we're being mistreated, if we don't have that relationship with ourselves to where we value ourselves, we're going to be missing things. We're not connecting the dots as fully as we need to. And so it is really important that you get to that place where you fully realize, you know what, I have value. And I'm not going to stand there and argue with somebody and try to get them to see it. Either they see it or they don't. But like, that's their loss. I just,
Well, and it
It's
makes it nearly impossible to set boundaries when you
yes.
can't see it, and when you don't have enough self-esteem to realize that, like you said, you have worth, and you're a being on this earth, so you don't have to accept any abuse from anybody. Period.
It's
And
very
that's a really
crippling not to have that. Very crippling. And once
it,
you
it
do find that, it's a total game changer. It changes your interaction with everything,
Yep.
including yourself, just everything.
Cascades across your whole life
Yes.
in a good way.
yes. Yes. And it absolutely. And that's a great point that you bring up about it's really difficult. It's impossible, really, for us to set boundaries because our boundaries are an extension of our standards, and our standards are often a reflection of our self-esteem, of what we feel
Mhm.
that we're worth.
And
And
you
so it's
want,
just kind of this ripple effect. Yeah.
sorry, you also want to protect yourself when you don't have, because you're not worthy protection, right? So
Yes. Yes. That's another really great point is, um, yeah. Instead of walking away, instead of saying, no, that's not okay with me, if we're coming from that less than point of view of, you know what, I should just settle for crumbs and I should just be okay. And I should just be lucky that somebody's interested in me. And, I just be thankful for what I get in this world. And we're just coming from this place where we have no expectations of other people. And we're um, just trying to convince ourselves that are enough, crumbs of kindness, crumbs of honesty, crumbs of decency, crumbs of respect, and that doesn't work. And a person with healthy self-esteem values themselves, and they know that they have worth. And like I was saying, they don't sit there and they don't argue with another person, whereas a person with low self-esteem will do that. uh, this stuff happens early on, and I see this a lot in the support group where people will post things and it's these outrageous behavior from another person. They're either cussing at them, they're demanding, they're belittling, they're abusive. This stuff is deal breaker stuff for people with healthy self-esteem, and especially if you're just dating the person, right? And you're not that emotionally invested and you don't have kids with them. It's a lot easier to walk away when, you're a month or two into a relationship. And, uh, but what they'll do is they will, they might bring up, hey, well, that's not okay. Or they'll continue to try to argue that. And it's basically explaining the basics of adult behavior to another adult. And a person that sees their value doesn't do that because they're like, you know what, there's a lot of fish in the sea. I'm not going to sit here and try to get somebody to not cuss at me or to not belittle me or what have you.
That's with boundaries, I found that to me, preferences are part of boundaries. Every preference we have is a definition of the border or boundary of what makes us who we are in the world and to ourselves. So if you grew up in an environment where you were discouraged or not allowed to have preferences,
mhm.
it's really hard to go from not having the most simple, basic boundaries that are preferences to try and have deal breaker behavior. If you skip over that step, it's going to be very hard and you have this big blind spot. You might not even have a mirror to check for a blind spot. I mean, I can see where these things were true in my life anyway, where once I started exploring my preferences and feeling like, well, I do have as much right as anyone else to my preferences without stepping on anybody else's preferences, and that's fine. It changed everything. About boundaries weren't the kind of struggle to even see if I should have one or not, because a preference is already a boundary and you don't have to work as hard at it when you are owning those preferences, if that makes sense.
Can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
How does this impacted your experience of your self-worth?
Oh, tremendously. I think it's had everything to do with how I experience myself. I don't, if something feels bad to me now, I don't have to even question, should I feel bad, or is it me or is it them? If something's making me feel bad, I just say, okay, this is making me feel bad. How do I want to deal with that? And then go from it. I don't even have to mess with all that other stuff that used to suck me down because I didn't have that basis to understand any of it. It was just a huge, it was like not having an arm and trying to scratch your back. You just can't, you know,
I
Yeah.
like
it
that.
wasn't
It's a waste
because
of
something
time.
was wrong with me. I just didn't have the knowledge. I wasn't prepared for that. I had to learn it the longer, hard way. But that's okay, because I probably learned it better than I would have if somebody, I don't know, that's speculation, but the point is I like where I am now. So yeah, it's tremendous impact on my sense of myself, and not just my worth, but the people around me. That whole less than, better than thing, to me, it's, you know, everybody has exactly the same rights to their preferences as I do. If we don't agree on something, we can work it out or step back, or, I mean, there's all kinds of ways to deal with that. I don't have to make somebody else more or less than me, or vice versa. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I love you said that, because it sounded like you experienced a completely new level of confidence about who you are and
Yeah,
yourself
a lot
more.
more.
And you
Very
save
much
lots
more.
of time not dealing with the
Yes.
things you used to deal,
Yes.
right? So that's the time you can invest to actually create a life you love living now.
And I think it's easier for us to be grounded in our reality, Shay, what you were saying about, I feel the way that I feel, and this is my reality, and I'm able to respond from it. I don't need to come from a place of greater than or less than, but realizing there's no such thing as me being too sensitive, right? Like if something's
Mhm.
not okay with me, then it's just not okay with me. And I feel like I'm worth being asserting myself and making, it's coming from that place where we're really valuing our safety and sanity and making sure our external environment is in alignment with our internal environment as much as possible. And actually one more point real quick before I pass it over to, let's see, was it James? Were you doing chapter 5?
Now it's me, Dana.
No.
Oh, okay. Okay. So then real quick, we had Sansu Wellness had mentioned, is there anything in this book about how to be assertive in a positive way? And Agata, you would responded, no, this book is about more than just being assertive. I agree, but I also think I will look for books on communication styles and how to be assertive, because that's one thing that we really haven't covered yet that I think we should. So, okay. That's
Yeah,
my
and I
piece.
would love to cover that. That sounds awesome.
Okay.
Could definitely use that.
I'll look for some books, and we will have a list. We're going to work probably in the next few days of getting a list compiled for all of 2019. And I'll have that on my website, and then we can talk about it next live stream. But real quick, for those of you hopping on, we are discussing the Self-Esteem Workbook by Glenn Schiraldi. I saw that in a comment. Okay, I got to take it away.
No, it's fine. I think everyone will be happy. I have to talk with less today. My voice may go away. Oh gosh, so I had the perfect chapter, and I think I was really glad when I was reading it. It's, you know, I experienced a lot of psychological abuse, so I ended up with my head filled with bunches of very negative thought patterns. Like it's just crazy town, like very disempowering, and you know, my inner critic 100% on. So, and you know, I worked through it with my therapist for a long time already, so I'm not where I used to be, but it's been just so great to look at. And another way, I'm sorry guys, can you just ignore that phone? There's like another way to deal with those, and I really love it. So first of all, let's, oh gosh, I'm sorry, I'm not in my home. I can't even stop that.
You know what? How about you mute it just in case it's personal stuff, and then we'll come back to you, okay? Since you can't stop it. Let's see. Does anybody have you guys come back or come across any books on assertiveness that maybe you could recommend? And I guess if you have, can you make it in the comments and let us know? Okay, you back?
Anyway, I'm back. I'm sorry. So,
okay, nope. Take it away.
So here's what usually happens, right? There is like, probably most people are familiar now with like the ABCD active, I think in Maslow or Ellis. There was something happens, so there's activating event, then that activates an automatic response in your head, like a thought, and usually we have a negative negative. Something is wrong with me, somebody's angry with me, they don't like me, you know, like some kind of thoughts. And that leads to emotional consequences. So basically, you know, impacts your experience of your self-worth. And there is a bunch of different, they call it automatic thoughts and distortions. And for example, shoulds, I, you know, assuming the words, I should have done something better, you know, the black and white thinking, the all or nothing, leveling yourself, I'm such a loser, you know, those kind of things, dwelling on the negative, rejecting all the positive. So for like rejecting positive, for example, is if you know, something happened in a day that was negative, that just means your whole day will be negative from now on. Like you're not even open to the possibility of anything positive happen. I guess I'm trying to give you all the different examples because I think everyone, you know, can see themselves in some of them. There's, I think 13 or 14, 13 of those. Another one will be, I love this one, unfavorable comparison. So basically, you magnify strength and good things of others, and you always minimize yourself. So we do it to ourselves. So in that book, he doesn't only list all the different ways that, you know, our mind basically robs us from our experience of self-worth, but also gives us like an antidote how to deal with it. And I really like those antidotes because sometimes they are create like a question marks, which is it's a really great you know, thing for your brain to get a question, because when you get a question, you actually get curious about the answer, and you know, you actually learn it better, like you remember it longer. So let's say you are someone who every time something negative happens, and you always go, oh, I should have known it. Like, for example, we victims of abuse, we have it often. We always feel like we should have known something before, or we shouldn't have go out with this person, or we shouldn't have broken the no contact or something like that. So when this happens, instead of I should have, you can replace this with what, like ask yourself a question like, what would someone who loves themselves do? Or you can also say like, instead of like should or would, we can say like I could have done it, and it's okay, I've done it. Like you could have. Or you know, it could be actually something that you really wanted to do, and you want to accept it, that I wanted to do it, and it's okay. So I really like those because then they take you to this really cool exercise when you go through the like daily thought record. Now, I don't want it to like become like another thing to do for people, because, you know, building your self-worth, I don't think it should be like an overwhelming task, you know, for us already, because we've been dealing with so much as survivors of abuse. So, you know, like when you read the kind of book, like a workbook with a bunch of exercises, I think you really want to be loving and kind to yourself, and like those exercises, don't do them all at once, just, you know, do them when you feel need, or when you actually want to work on, you know, one of the aspects. But here's the thing, you can actually try for a couple of days and like just record all the negative thoughts you having about yourself, or like, you know, just record the events and your responses to it. And then here is what I love so much, and actually this really relates to Pia Melody too. And it's about like, you actually wanna try to see what will be the mature and functional reaction to it, response. So you wanna ask yourself like what your good friend would do in this situation, for example, or what would you advise someone else to do in this situation? How would someone who has lots of confidence respond in that kind of situation? And then you analyze all your results, and it's kind of fun because I think this is based in cognitive psychology over here a lot. It's all about like just thinking about sorry, what is causing your behavior and your, you know, your emotional responses and like trying to model it towards the more mature and, you know, functional response. Oh God, and then another thing is very cool, which you actually, I guess everyone gets there at some point. It addresses like most of those should have, I should have, I could have, or blaming yourself, or you know, like just those not functional negative responses to different events are based because we have a bunch of really deep core beliefs about, you know, ourselves or how life should be. And there's the exercise when we can actually discover some of your beliefs. And this is also just asking yourself a question, well, why did I respond that? What did that mean to me? And you kind of take it all the way down to the root belief, which is, I don't know, which is really cool, I think. And I found a very common, and I actually have that very, you know, never addressed belief is that, I don't think that will be a shocker for anyone, but lots of us believe that it is bad to think well of oneself. And it's such a source of freaking suffering. Like I was reading it and I really wanted to cry because I felt like it's crazy, because the thing is that thinking well about yourself is something that will empower you in your life, but we have this belief that it's selfish and it's bad to think well about yourself. So you can guys jump in because I'm okay with you, you know, contributing to it, because I think it's really great, you know.
Yeah.
No,
You know,
I
I have
fully
to say,
agree. Sorry.
I wonder, when I was reading that and kind of, you know, really embracing self-esteem, I would be curious to know if that is like a worldwide thing, or if that's more of a United States kind of our roots and puritanical colonization. Like, where does that, is that a worldwide thing? Do they have that in Poland? And
Well,
do
I'm
people
from
struggle with
Poland,
this?
so it has to be more worldwide. I think it's the same as narcissist is worldwide, Dana. Like there is a narc, basically like a workbook for them. Like they all act the same way in every culture. I think this is very similar, the core beliefs. They crazy. Like I was reading them. Most of people, and this is really most of people believe, I am inadequate. Some of them are more like common, like we heard them. Life should be easy and problems less to enjoy. That belief is setting up us or for like basically feeling bad about everything every day, right?
Mhm.
Absolutely. That right there is a huge point for me. And I've noticed that lately where I am with my healing is I'm able to look at things that I used to think, oh, I can't handle this. This is overwhelming. I can't, you know, I just had all this negative self direction that was collapsing me down. And I've realized now that I look at that and I say, okay, well, that feels overwhelming and hard. Why is that? And what can I do? And I look at it more as an opportunity to learn how to do something better for myself instead of as this terrible thing. And that made me realize that we have the power to change our relationship with our own adversity. It doesn't
Yes.
have to be this horrible thing. It can be, you can even enjoy adversity, which would have blown my mind if somebody tried to tell me that a decade ago. I just would have stared at them, you know, like they were from Mars. But I find more and more that if I get triggered, if I have something that's making me feel really insecure, or I can just sit down with that now and say, okay, well, I'm about to learn from this and I love the learning thing now. So it's okay. I mean, I can, if I mess it up, that's fine, but I can learn something. And it's not bigger than me anymore. It's just something to engage with, if that makes sense. And it changes a lot about how confident you are, even just trying new things or stretching yourself, or it's a huge shift to be able to change your relationship with what's going on instead of just being responding from that reactive place.
Mhm.
And the other thing I wanted to say about the cultural thing, I mean, I don't know for a fact, but I think it has to be universal because when we're little, whatever we're getting from the people around us that's been handed down for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, that's not very
Mhm.
helpful. So we learn what life means and what our place is in it when we're really little from sources that probably haven't learned that in a helpful way either. So they can't show us. So
Yes.
until, none of those patterns are who we are. And that's another distinction. When you separate yourself from anything you think you've done wrong or should have known, you can't know something until you have an opportunity to learn it, for one thing. And
Yeah.
it's,
Please.
I guess that's really my only point about that, is that you can't, to be able to be a lot more compassionate, not just for ourselves, but for everybody. I mean, there's a lot of challenging things everybody's handed right out of the gate that's pretty limiting. And we absorb that. And then we spend the next 4 decades trying to pull ourselves out of it.
No, we spent 3 decades first blaming
Right.
and complaining about what happened. And then the last decade, we spent actually pulling ourselves out of it.
That's when you start getting to the good part, though.
The last decade is always the best, right?
Yes.
I'm glad you went there, because basically how you exemplified how you actually addressed your core belief. This book actually encourages everyone to do that, to really question it, to find actually evidence of why this core belief is not true, and the impact of that belief on your life, how disempowering it is, and actually to find basically like change the way you look at the world, and you have a relationship with the problem, but also with your past. Like you can totally change the relationship with, and with your behavior. For example, it's okay to criticize your own behavior. It's okay to even criticize in a healthy way your thinking, but you don't have to criticize yourself and question your own self-worth when you do that. So you can change your behavior, you can change how you think, you can change how you respond, and you don't have to change yourself, because you have a right to still be the same you are. You're only working on your behavior, which is I think it's great, because it kind of like, it's almost like your experience of a self-worth, it's really connected to how you think. So like if you actually consider your thoughts as a skill, then you can kind of improve your thinking skill, right? And just try to think positively. But I mean, actually not positively, because this is not about positive thinking. I don't know why I even said that. That was a mistake. Now there is also great exercise about just kind of grading yourself, like you did that, Dana. I think in the first part, how you kind of assess your self-worth. So here you kind of go deeper. You actually want to focus on some characteristic of yourself. Like you want to, assess like how intelligent you feel, how fun you feel, how playful you feel, how you would assess your character. And I think everyone should do this exercise, because I think when you do it, you will feel way better about yourself. I think most people will grade themselves pretty good, because you can actually pick the thing you want to grade yourself on and find some favorite thing about yourself, which I thought was really great. I don't know what else. Oh, okay. This I really want to say. Each person this is the 3 most important ideas here about your self-worth. Each person is of infinite, unchanging, and equal worth, which comes with birth. So Dana already said that at the beginning. Now, the core self is separate from externals. So externals can cover up the core or help it to shine, but the worth of the core is constant. So your job can add some prestige to you, but your worth is still the same. Like since the moment you were born till the moment you will die, your worth, the worth of the core is the same, constant. Now, people express their worth in a unique ways and patterns, but each person at the core is whole, possessing all necessary attributes in embryo. Of course, except when, the nature fails, right? Like, because not everyone is born with the full capacity, basically. And the book here also wants you to practice, like, I guess 4 things. So basically, like, working on all your thought distortions. So replacing all the negative thoughts with not positive, but functional and mature thoughts. Use the even though nevertheless skill, which is really, that's my favorite, and I forgot about it. So when someone criticizes you, or like when you actually, even when you do something, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm so dumb. Why have I done it? Like, that was so stupid. Like, if you say that, instead of going to the typical way, I'm stupid because I failed at it, you completely take the because out and you say, even though I failed at this test, nevertheless, I'm still a worthy person, I'm capable of success in the future, and I can do better next time. So even though a mistake or some failure, nevertheless, I am still a worthy, wonderful person. I think that was brilliant.
Yeah,
and
your mistakes do not define you.
No, that's the external. And this one you can actually practice with your girlfriends. I did it with my girlfriend. I have big mouth, right? And I'm very unfiltered. So my friend said, so I said, criticize me, say something negative about me. And she said, you will talk unfiltered and sometimes you are rude, right? I'm like, oh boy. I'm like, okay, so even though I talk unfiltered and sometimes it's rude, nevertheless, I am capable of loving people and sharing, and I'm still worthy human being, right? And it kind of gives you this a little bit different sense of who you are, because you can basically you stepping in, being responsible of reminding yourself first over and over and over again that your value is the same no matter what happens. Now, the next chapter I actually had a problem reading because it was about unconditional love. And I don't have much unconditional love for manipulators, to be honest with you. I don't think anyone has. So I'm just going to say it because I think that's important to just say it. So, lots of people in a history, and I think I did have believed that for the longest in my life, is that every person who's born, they have this need to love and be loved. And I really get that. Like, I think a healthy person is that way. And, for us to be really healthy, we need to have the need of love met and secured. Like, we need a source of love in our life. But I don't think love is that motive behind everyone's behavior anymore, because I've seen way too much, right? I'm aware. So I'm gonna just say that. So when you're reading this book, you have to just, make sure that you're not reading it to try to stay with an abusive person in your life, basically. Because, taking this one belief here, or like the idea that everyone wants love and everyone deserves love, taking just this idea out of the context and trying to use it in your circumstances meant basically bring harm into your life, will not improve your self-worth, will actually eradicate it. So don't do that. But I want to leave you with this. I guess this is a really cool. Actually, there's 2 things. So the self core is also here called an inner child. And I didn't know that the inner child is actually a metaphor for the self-worth core. I haven't seen that ever before. So here also you can do a couple exercises. So anyone who's interested on the inner child work, there is 2 great exercises in this book, about how to first find and connect with your inner child. So I'm not gonna give you the exercise, but because I'm gonna miss the instructions. I don't know if Dana, do you wanna put it somewhere later in your notes or something, or just, read the book, people, you can read. But there are 2 really cool exercises. Sorry. One is to discover the inner child within you and really connect with it. And the second one is about, it's called, the second one is about like really loving your inner child. So kind of healing it and connecting it with yourself, like kind of like incorporating your inner child in your heart and having it there with you every day. So it's like kind of reparenting. It's really cool. It's really awesome. And
Yeah.
yeah.
And checking in with it every few days or a week, which I'm bad at, but I'm trying to get better about it.
And you were asking me about it one time, remember?
No.
About I think you were talking about it, but because I saw a different exercise when you are actually writing in your journal a letter to your inner child. This is where, if you like more like guided, Dina, you could do guided meditation about it, because that exercise is designed as a guided meditation. That would be, I think everyone here would love to hear your voice guiding them to love their inner child. They would just go ecstatic about that.
Yeah, I did one a while back where you kind of go in an elevator down, and it sounds kind of woo woo like but it works. And you go and you meet your inner child out in a playground or a field or something, and just meet them and talk to them and stuff like that. So I think that would be a good idea.
Yeah, totally.
Helpful too.
So
I can make that happen.
Yes, you can make lots of things happen, Dana. In 2019. I wanna leave you guys with that from those chapters, because that's really fun. So a feeling, love can be a feeling, an attitude, a decision or a commitment to yourself, and a skill that can be cultivated, right? There are 3 main sources of love in your life, which is your parents, you, actually 4, because they put God in there too. So the divine and, other people, your friends and just your significant others. The only source of love that you can actually monitor, empower, and be responsible is you. So basically, don't waste your time trying to get the love from where you cannot get love from, and give yourself that love. That's like so freaking important. And here, if you ever date someone, I want that person to love you that way, because this is that song by Mr. Rogers. I did not grow up watching Mr. Rogers, but I read this song and I think this is brilliant. So I'm gonna read it now because it made me cry. So I can't sing, I'm gonna read it. I like you just the way you are. It's you I like. It's not the thing you wear. It's not the way you do your hair, but it's you I like. The way you are right now, the way down deep inside you, not the thing that hides you. I love it. So I want everyone to have someone like that in their life. That's my wish for everyone for 2019.
Make you that someone in your life first, and you'll always have someone.
Yes, that's exactly where it starts. You have to be that first. If you believe in God, in Christianity, the God is that first source of love that gives you the love for yourself and others, but then you have to be that source of your love for yourself. So it's very important.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so what chapters did you go through?
I was going 5 through 11. I think you are next, Dana.
Oh, I think you're right. Oh my
That
goodness.
was you next. I remember. Then is James, and then is Shay.
Okay, so let me find my chapters here. And these are brief, so we'll kind of speed through them. Chapter 12 was about loving relationships, and I like how he spelled this out. He said it's characterized by appreciation, liking, respect, and acceptance. And I would also say that stands for not only our relationships with others, but our relationship with ourself. And so just like Shay and Agata were talking about, it stems from everything. It stems from within. We are the relationship that we have with ourselves sets the tone of all of the other relationships in our life. So that's a big one. And it talks about paying attention to your self-talk and correcting it if it's disempowering or rude. So in looking at the things that you might not like about yourself, or the things that might not be going right in your life, looking at it about in terms of behavior and not it's who you are. So it's just, you're not internalizing everything that's, not working in your life, which I really like that.
Boundaries.
Huh?
Boundaries.
Yes. Chapter 13 is, this is a good one too. The love and opinions of others do not equal self-esteem. If it did, it would be called others' esteem. So criticism does not damage your self-esteem without your consent. And I'm going to go a little bit deeper into that one here in a second. And love and approval will not build your self-esteem without your consent. And so this is something that we talk about often, about how it's so important to keep, because it's hard for anybody to hear criticism, let alone being verbally abused or attacked. It's normal to feel bad when that happens, or to feel sensitive or hurt. But it's really important that we keep our hurt feelings and our self-worth in two different buckets. I just can't stress that enough. And so a lot of us, because other people have criticized us, and that statement that criticism does not damage your self-esteem without your consent can feel untrue. Of like, hey, I never consented to this and it still damaged my self-esteem. Pia Melody, I think, would understand this more of kind of a fault. Just bear with me here with the wording, a faulty containment boundary, or a dysfunctional containment boundary, which means what our containment boundary is, what we let in, and then also what we put out. So if a person doesn't have that containment boundary, they just take everything in and they internalize it. So if somebody calls you a name, or if they tell you they're belittling or demeaning or defining or critical, if we don't have that containment boundary, we just take all of that in as absolute truth. Whereas if we have a functioning containment boundary, when we're keeping our hurt feelings and our self-worth in two different buckets, if somebody is saying these awful things to us, we're able to say, you know what, that's not true. This person's a jerk, or that's not necessary, or I don't need to be talked to like that. And we see those kinds of verbal attacks as a reflection of them and what's going on in their life, and it doesn't have anything to do with us. So we don't own the garbage that somebody's throwing at us, which is huge. And that takes practice. But I think sometimes just having the awareness of, oh my goodness, I didn't realize that I don't need to own this. And I only take in what resonates with me. And real quick too, this isn't to be confused with having kind of this delusional level of self-esteem. Like, well, I'm perfect and I'm wonderful and all of this. If you remember what I said early on about self-esteem is about this realistic and kind of honest appraisal of our honest appreciation of our self-worth. Healthy self-esteem is if somebody's telling you something, if they're being critical, they can still be constructively critical. So there might be some truth in what they're saying to you, but the part that we don't own is all of, the garbage around that. So healthy self-esteem is like, you know what? I can own certain things. Yeah, maybe I failed this test, or I didn't do a good job on that. That might very well be true, but that doesn't mean that I am incompetent or stupid or lazy or any of that stuff. So we can hold on to whatever might be true in that and then let the rest go.
And you fully accept yourself.
Yes. Yeah. Realizing it's part of being human is to make mistakes, and that's how we all learn. If we were born having it all figured out, life would be really boring.
Yeah.
I mean, it would. Okay. So chapter 14 talks about it's often easier for us to be critical of ourselves, and it can be difficult to acknowledge our strengths, but it's vitally important that we do so. It's important that we get familiar with our strengths and the things that we are reasonably good at. And one of the exercises he recommends is taking the time to list 10 positive statements and then look for evidence of its accuracy. And this exercise was on page 94. And there's a whole checklist in here of different words like handy, punctual, optimistic, appreciative, respectful, industrious, sharing, physically fit, cooperative, tactful, open-minded, and so on. There's probably 30 or so different words on here. And then also to check off some things that you're sometimes reasonably good at. So maybe a cook, a planner, a supporter of other people, ideally in a healthy way, a thinker, storyteller, taker of criticism, these kinds of things. And so then we're writing down 10 of these things that we identified with, and then really allowing that to soak in and owning that and realizing that it's okay. It's okay to acknowledge what are the things that are working for you? What are the things that are right about you? It's important that we see that. And let's see, chapter 15 talks about doing something similar, but in relation to your body. And it can be very difficult for, I think, a lot of us to focus on what we like about our body. I think the human brain in general is kind of geared to focus on what needs improvement, what's a problem. And we tend to gloss over everything that's going right. But one thing you said about this that I really liked is if you're having trouble finding things about your body that you like, to start at a deeper level, start internally. That, wow, you're really appreciative that your liver functions or that your lungs function, or what an amazing gift that your red blood cells carry oxygen. My goodness, our bodies, we're born. The gift is so amazing. It's like being born and just given a Lamborghini. Our bodies are just this amazing, complex machine. And so much of this stuff just functions without us having to do anything or think about it or anything. And what a gift to have the health that we do have internally. So starting there and just realizing that, man, there's so much right about you, and starting from a cellular level. And then chapter 17, he talks about unconditional love. So I like this. This is about taking action from a place of loving ourselves versus taking action from a place of hating ourselves. Probably an example of this might be the person, if you guys are interested in, there's all these different weight loss journeys on YouTube, right? I don't know if you guys are into these videos, but I know I am. And people, sometimes they might start, I think most of the time we're motivated by pain. Somebody says something mean, our pants don't fit. There's some sort of catalyst for change. And so they might start off working out or changing the way that they eat from a place of disgust, like, I can't handle this anymore. But very quickly, when that starts becoming a habit, then they start operating from a place of love. So we're not losing weight or we're not getting healthy because we hate ourselves. We're doing these things because we actually love ourselves. And I think that's a very important distinction to make, because if that's not there, if that self-love isn't there, and again, taking that example of weight loss, this is how what can start off as normal dieting or weight loss can turn into eating disorders, or it can turn into compulsive or addictive behaviors in other ways. Because then once our body's fixed, then we might start fixating on other things that we don't like about ourselves. And it can just create this very kind of toxic shame spiral. So I think it's important for us to take action from a place of, I'm taking action because I value myself and I love myself. Then chapter 18, is to look at yourself through the eyes of a dear friend, a loving family member, God, or someone who holds you in unconditional positive regard. How do they see you? What is there to appreciate about you? So you might, for example, notice things like your talents and skills, the way that you express different emotions, the different personality or character traits, such as your humor, your intelligence, your creativity, your patience, your laughter, your insightfulness, and so on. And when you're looking at yourself from the outside, and here's an example too, like if you've ever been around a bunch of little kids, for example, and they're all such different personalities, and it can be so interesting because at that point, they're still generally innocent. There's not that level of like maliciousness there. And so they can be enjoyable in that way. Even the kids that are really rambunctious or, they're just climbing the walls, they can be exhausting, but you see these different things like, oh, I just really appreciate that about little Ricky. He's so full of energy and he's just such a kick to have, because that kid is always into something, or this other little child is so artistic, or this one is such a deep thinker. My goodness. So the stuff that they come up with is amazing. Or this one is a class clown and they have such a great sense of humor. It can be so much easier.
When you say that, when you're saying that, something just really clicked for me. I'm sorry I'm interrupting, but I'm just like, because in this book, basically, there's this thought how love is like the requirement for growth and like developing yourself, in the right way, or like healthy way, health basically. Mm-hmm. And you are now describing kids, and I'm thinking, this is why big part of our healing is developing and maturing and learning, because we didn't have that love to grow, in that childhood and to develop skills.
That positive mirroring, a lot of us missed enough of that to develop that as we could have in a more nurturing environment than maybe some of us had.
That's why we're so immature in relationships and in basically someone. That's why we're so codependent, because codependence is that disease of immaturity. Like, I know some people hate it, but I think it's actually explained brilliantly. So and that's why it's so freaking important for you to do anything you have to do now to give yourself that love now. Because if you don't give yourself love, you can try change, but the change won't last, basically. Because you really want to grow. Sorry.
I think that was a great comment, and that's so true. That I think love needs to be there in order for change to happen. But another way to maybe say that is just this level of unconditional positive regard for another person, because change, like we were talking about earlier, it involves a lot of feeling embarrassed, and it can be a lot of shame and a lot of really painful emotions for a lot of people. And so a lot of us we fear change because we don't want rejection. We don't want to make a fool out of ourselves. It's awkward, it's uncomfortable, and it's messy. And if we have somebody in our life, and I like how they said this, it's a friend, it's God, it's somebody that holds you in positive regard, where that can allow us, that can normalize this experience of, yes, you're doing something new. You're going to stumble and fall. It's going to be messy, but it's part of growth. And it's so exciting to see you growing and being a cheerleader. Like, you can do it. Why not you? Why not now? Other people have been able to do this. You can too.
Right.
And like you were saying, in childhood, for so many people, self-esteem is originally cultivated by having that positive validation by parents, and that quality time, and realize in that interacting with the child in a way that shows them, hey, you're important, listening to what they say, taking their feelings seriously, letting them know, hey, you matter, you're here, it's okay. Yeah, your feelings and your thoughts and your opinions matter. And if we're denied that as a child, then yes, this kind of stunts our emotional growth. But the good news is we're here now. And like Shay and Agato are saying, the first 30 years or so, it's oftentimes blaming other people. But actually, I would even say that it quite possibly a good chunk of our early life, it's just being angry or being hurt. And then it shifts into blame. And then it shifts into, oh my gosh, I get that there's personal growth that needs to happen. I didn't realize this before. And then it becomes where we shift that locus of control from, blaming others into focusing on ourselves. And also too, with the blame, kind of balancing that with appropriate blame of, you know what, I didn't get this. I didn't get X, Y, and Z as a child. That wasn't right. And that wasn't fair. And that's incredibly painful. So holding certain people accountable in your mind, it is okay. But then it's important that we start healing ourselves and giving ourselves that love, that validation, that quality time, that appreciation that we didn't get. So
you basically validate. I think what you said for me, it was the moment I validated my anger and my experience that what was done to me was wrong and I was a victim of something, like I validated that. That's when it's basically, this is the first moment to give yourself a little dose of love, because you're saying to yourself, it's okay for me to have that experience because it actually happened. So you validate yourself, and then you can actually say, okay, because you have a different experience of yourself in that moment. Okay, what can I do now to actually give myself a life that I want to have? And the quality of the health or whatever I need. Yeah. Yep.
And then chapters 19 and 20, and then I'll pass it off to the next person here. Chapter 19 had to do with mirror work. If you've ever read anything by Louise Hay, she was another kind of self-help person, and she was really big. She's probably best known for mirror work. And it's basically where you look at yourself in the mirror. You're basically looking deep into yourself. So you're not focusing on all of the fine lines or the gray hairs, or you're not looking at your physical appearance. You're looking deep into your eyes and reconnecting with that inner child within you. And you're having a real heart-to-heart talk with yourself. Just acknowledging things, letting you know that there's so much that is right about you. And it's a powerful stuff, and it's really super awkward at first, and it does feel really woo-woo. And but if you can push through that discomfort to where you can make that connection, and you're just having a heart-to-heart with yourself, it's so incredibly powerful. I think there's so many people out there that really struggle with low self-esteem. I know I was one of them for a long time, where I really didn't even look in the mirror. I would brush my teeth, and when I brushed my teeth, I was focused on my teeth. When I would do my hair, I was focused on my hair. I would really try to not look at myself because I didn't like who I was. And I saw everything wrong with me. But if you can see everything that's right about you and reconnect, it's just very powerful. Okay, so chapter 20, and then I'm done. Chapter 20 is on unconditional love. And unconditional love is wanting what is best for oneself. And that is made moment by moment, decision by decision, every day. Your psychological health and growth depend on love for your core self. Self-love is something that's learned and acquired through practice. And again, this is I think the vast majority of people, this is something that we have to learn. We're learning now. This stuff isn't taught, and it's very rarely role modeled because of a lot of these limiting beliefs that we were talking about earlier, where I guess it's not even a cultural thing, it's a worldwide thing, where it feels selfish and self-absorbed and self-centered to acknowledge everything that's right about us. And so because none of us are in tune with that, it's really difficult for us to value ourselves because we're not seeing ourselves accurately. And that's so huge, to practice self-love. And if the word love is tripping you up, you can replace that with value, self-value. How can you best value yourself in this moment? What does that look like? If you valued yourself, how would you take care of yourself? What kind of foods would you eat? What kind of exercise would you do? What kind of friends would you have? What kind of quality time would you give yourself? And start steering into that. Like, let that be your North Star, and that'll take you pretty far down the path. And then also, we are responsible for cultivating love for our core self. And this love, once we cultivate it, can always be there, even if we don't get it from others, because we are kind of filling that our own bucket with that. And it is really powerful. And it's everything. It sets the tone for everything. So that's what I have. Who's got the next handful of chapters? Is
That
you,
would be
Shane?
me. And
Oh,
yeah,
it's you, Shane.
also
Okay.
it's a very big and awesome shift when you can go from trying to fill everybody else's buckets to filling your own. It's a huge game changer.
Hmm.
Along with self-esteem from within instead of looking for it from the outside. So chapter 21 is experience love at the heart level. And the way I took it was it kind of relates to meditation to me, which I've been doing for a couple of months now, and it does help. I didn't do the full table on the last page of the chapter, but the ones I did do, like waking up and you think back to a positive memory. Like for me, I put walking in nature at on a trail or something. And the positive emotion that I activated was self-compassion, because for me, when I go into nature, it feels very warm and very, I feel like I'm at home for whatever reason with the, nature and trees and the wind and all the other woo-woo stuff. So, and it's relaxing and calming, and it's a very positive experience. So chapter 22 was self-compassion and mindful awareness, which I think this chapter was pretty cool because it had two different charts at the beginning of the chapter, the second page. And I checked a lot on both sides, the hard on self, self-critical, and kind of self, which I think that's pretty interesting because I guess I'm in the middle of a shift between learning to be kind to myself and being self-critical. And the default for me right now is to be self-critical in those difficult times. But the first step is noticing that and trying to shift it and change it by, reading this book or meditation or whatever else. Then how self-critical are you? The little scale that it wants you to kind of rate yourself, I put a 3. Because I'm, like I said, I default to being self-critical, but there are times where I can have self-kindness. So I kind of didn't do that part. So then the next chapter is 23, meet pain with self-compassion. And nope, not yet. Sorry, it's a lot. This workbook has a lot of information in it. So that chapter is you write a lot about, like, for example, a puppy limping in the street and your concern or empathy level, and then whatever feelings you associate or you have at that moment. And there's 13 different ones, which was interesting to see, but most of mine were about the same rating. The highest was best friend dying because it's kind of tough to think about. And then,
James,
yeah,
when I was reading that chapter, I was always like, it just hit me how I have way more compassion for a limping puppy than myself in some situations in my life.
isn't that interesting to notice?
Yeah, I was just like, whoa. And you know how those commercials with the animal shelter, they like make you sob
They
like
play into
crazy.
it. I
But
hate
but
those
then the
things.
society, like if you put a commercial of a battered, I mean, some awareness for the domestic violence, people don't wanna. It's a crazy that society we are right
Yeah.
now. Yeah, we have no compassion for domestic violence victims, but we have compassion for dogs and cats and that. Yeah,
I think that'll change one day.
it's changing.
We're working on it right now.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Heck yeah, we are.
Come on, go to that journaling because that was the best part of your part.
I know, right? I was gonna say I actually wrote it on my notes that was my favorite chapter. But before that, chapter 24, experiencing self-compassion at the body level. It sounds kind of weird, but the end of that chapter where it wants you to reinforce the intention and be compassionate, and you place your hands over your heart. It sounds weird, but for whatever reason, the action of actually putting your hands on your heart or on your body, it's very powerful. And it was tough at first because I was, you know, becoming tearful from it. And I didn't understand why, but just to be peaceful to yourself and safe, kind to myself, and accept yourself as you are. So that was that chapter. And my favorite chapter, chapter 25, was compassionate journaling. So I've journaled now for a little over a year, and it's been super helpful, but this kind of adds like another layer to the journaling, and it's going to be another, I say it a lot, but a game changer for me. Because it's cool when you can kind of think outside of yourself how other people may have seen the event, because in the chapter they want you to describe an event. Important note, as long as it's not, if it's something that's going to send you to a really dark place, probably don't want to journal about that. But something that you feel is relatively safe, or you won't go to that bad place, and you just write about the event and what you saw, what you remember, what you felt. And I actually did that about so at my wedding reception with my ex, who was toxic. They actually, her side of the family actually had a fight break out at the reception. So I wrote about that in the the journaling. So it was cool, and it, like I said, it's a whole new layer of journaling, and I highly recommend journaling to anybody. Like Wonder Woman, right now journaling would be awesome for you to try. Just give it 2 or 3 days. Doesn't have to be anything specific. It can be whatever comes into your mind at the time, but just give it a try. And it journaling really helps a lot. And then in the last chapter, 26, is kind of an overview of the section of the book, Unconditional Love. And it just kind of it's meant to reinforce the ideals that you just went through in all the chapters. So I wish there was more time to revert the book, because I'm sure the other sections of the book are equally amazing.
But you can continue that workbook. Like, I don't go through everything. It doesn't mean
I
I'm
will.
gonna stop now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, Shay, how about you? What are your chapters?
My ending chapters, a lot of it is reinforcing everything that's already been done. The main thing that was taking it kind of to a higher level was that moral inventory, that really deep dive, honest look at yourself. And I think that's an excellent exercise to do, but don't jump ahead and start with that one, because I think it's far kinder to yourself to let yourself learn these things at a pace where you can feel good about your progress, and that helps you realize that you can grow, and that all of that. He talks about the even more statements, which is kind of like an accelerated version of what Agata was saying about the even though I didn't do X thing, I'm still worthy. That whole thing. There's another level of that where you're even more like, and when you're looking at growth, it doesn't make your worth different from how you came into the world, because there's that infinite worth. We just are worthy. But when you have that sense of growth, what it gives you is the personal empowerment to realize that you can be even more of your worth. You can shine it bright. If you think of yourself as a light, you can shine brighter and brighter through your growth. It doesn't mean you're worth more or less than you ever were. It's how you can bring that out into the world, and that feels really good. Feels good to you, and it feels good to people around you to experience that. And that whole exchange with other people is a really beautiful thing to enjoy as a reward for doing all of this stuff. But the personal moral inventory that he gets into is the one. He took that from the AA, the big book, I guess it is. I think it's an excellent thing to do, and it's similar to the earlier exercises he gave in the beginning, where you're examining, a lot of the same things, but at a really more intense level, that you really, I think, don't want to try doing that until you've given yourself that time to do the growing steps and feel good about appreciating that growth. And when you appreciate how you are evolving, instead of thinking that I've got to fix myself, I'm not okay unless I fix all these things, you start to realize that there's a joy that comes from experiencing how you grow. And that changes the way you look at what you have to do, and instead you want to grow. And that's a much better place to try and do something that's that intensive, in my opinion. And it's a very long exercise, so you would really, I'm not going to read through all the different steps, because that would take a whole live stream, and I don't think it would be helpful to do that. But I really would not try to do that until you already are feeling pretty good about just being you, and then use that as kind of an acceleration, if that makes sense, instead of a way to obtain a sense of esteem. And there's a chapter 31 is on practicing forgiving. That's a touchy topic. I liked how he discussed, and before I even touch on that, I think forgiving is whatever it means to each of us. And I don't think it's something we should try to do unless we feel like, okay, I'm going to work on this now. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks we should be doing about forgiving. But I found it very helpful what forgiving is not. Forgiving is not minimizing the hurt or ignoring your anger. Dismissing the pain or breezily offering forgiveness too quickly can actually impede your attempts to heal, which, yeah, I think that's a very important point. Some of us feel pushed by other people into this whole, well, we're not a good person unless we forgive. forgiveness isn't for the other person. It's so that we don't carry the anger around, because it's just going to damage the vessel. It's not going to do anything to that other person. And forgiveness is for us. To me, that's I think it's got to be done very gently, and it's more about sort of that last cleansing of, we've done all this growing work, and now we're looking at getting rid of that residue of any of that kind of lingering ickiness, and any, if we still feel resentful when we get triggered by similar things, or those are ways we can kind of let go of that and not have to continue to be as triggered. I mean, to me, that's more of what forgiveness really brings you. It doesn't mean you're ever saying something somebody did that was awful was an okay thing to do. That has nothing at all to do with it to me. And I liked that he was supporting that idea, that's not where forgiveness ought to go.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean tolerating bad behavior or allowing it to continue. And I think that's very important with the idea of unconditional love. Trying to give somebody unconditional love that neglects yourself is not unconditional love, because
Nope.
you have to be able to be unconditionally loving with yourself and someone else. And if you can be unconditionally loving towards a person who hurt you, but still choose, you can think of them as, I appreciate that they are the same infinite loving being in their soul as I am, but their behavior is destructive and I can't be near it. That's not unloving. It's not kind to someone else to let their really crummy, crappy, hurtful behavior slide. That's not helping them grow. I mean, it's not. And I used to think that sparing other people's feelings when they should be held accountable was somehow kind, and I've learned it really isn't. I was just afraid to have that voice, and I didn't understand that I had the right to my own preferences and to preserve my value, if that makes sense. So the way that forgiveness and unconditional love kind of work together is, it's an inclusive thing, but that doesn't mean you have to keep someone by you or allow a behavior at all. And that's a really key thing to understand, because manipulative people will try to get you on that hook of, well, if you loved me, you would forgive me and you would accept blah, blah, blah. No, that has nothing to do with unconditional love. Crappy behavior is not unconditionally loving, and I do not accept that. I mean, but you don't have the power to say that unless you're willing to include yourself in that unconditional love and start
Yeah.
from there.
And abusers love to use that
Yes, they
over and
do.
over again.
Yes,
Yes.
they really do. When you go through self-esteem steps like this whole workbook, you kind of see the abusive behaviors or problematic behaviors through a different lens, because you're realizing how unself-loving people who just want self-gratification and to push other people around, that's not self-love. What they're doing isn't anything like self-love or unconditional love. And years ago, I would not have been able to tell the difference. It's something that I had to experience, what it feels like to have a loving relationship with myself in a concrete daily way, like, where I'm living into that actively. And the more I do that, the easier it is to see things like when people are not doing that, and they're manipulating or just satisfying urges to distract themselves. And I'm not saying this in a judgmental way, because a lot of people, if you've got a big hole inside and a lot of pain, you're going to try and do something to make it feel better. So this isn't about judging that, but it allows you to discern in a way that's loving to yourself and still respectful and loving to another person, without tolerating something that you don't have any requirement whatsoever to tolerate. And when you start feeling that in your everyday life, and you start realizing that the decisions you are making in very small things are changing so dramatically. It's a really amazing thing to experience that, and it's so different. 10 years ago, oh my gosh, it just, I could cry to look back and see just how, you know, how awful it is. I mean, it's really awful to live life not having learned these things, and learning them is a great gift to give to yourself.
Mm-hmm. When you were saying how love is this or not that, it really takes away confusion if you replace love with value. Like, seriously.
That's true. That's a very good
Really
point.
makes it so
Love
easier.
is such an abstract word.
Mhm.
And it's
When I
so
first started exploring self-love, I didn't really know what that meant. So that's a good point. Value is a
Yeah.
good word to use instead.
So my one of the core beliefs was that the self-love is like being self-centered. Like I had this belief, and it's been a long time ago when it's been a while ago when I discovered it. But I remember I had problem when people were saying, oh, I need to love myself. Like, it sounded so negative to me for like the longest, until I realized that I'm not hearing it properly, that they don't say, I want to self-indulge myself. I mean, don't take me wrong. There are people who say it that way. They want to self-indulge, or, like put themselves higher than others. Some people are like that, unfortunately. But the healthy people, when they say self-love, they mean self-respect, value, honoring, respecting, nourishing yourself, and
governing yourself, knowing when to say no to yourself and where to put a kind limit inner out there. It's knowing it, and that's something, if it's not modeled that way for you, you just don't have the skill yet. But it's learnable. It's very learnable. Because boy, I was at negative 57 when I started all this, and I really have just come so far with it, and I'm sure I'll go much farther with it. And that sense of growth is very gratifying. And I agree with what you said, value or care, or I like governing myself, that sense of sovereignty. And it's sort of like being your own parent in a daily setting. And that's a skill that if there were holes in however your caregiving was in your early life, you didn't have it modeled for you. So really, we're teaching ourselves whatever things we missed, but we can do that. And that's, to me, that act of care, of learning these things and practicing them, but doing it kindly. It's okay not to know what you don't know, and you just, keep working at it. And that's enough. My thing shut down here. Hold on. I forgot where I was.
Well,
okay.
I just had that thought because I was always wondering, like the okay, I'm just gonna track it back. So the book also at some point addresses this thing that if you don't have a base of self-love, it doesn't matter how much growing you do, or self-work, or fulfilling and being successful in life, you will never ever get to that love. Like, it has to start from love. That explained to me so much, because my ex-husband, he is so much into spiritual growth. Like, he does Reiki, he does this guy meditates like 10 times a day. Like, I'm not kidding. He did different kind of spiritual retreats. He's all about it. But there was no love and compassion at the foundation of it. So basically it's like empty. And that
stuff can be used like a Band-Aid or a drug or anything else. If you don't have that underneath it, it's not supporting the love. It's trying to cover up the fact that it's not there.
Well, was he just doing it just to say, oh, look what I did? I went to all these retreats and I'm so amazing. And there's nothing wrong with retreats or meditation, but.
Well,
no, I love that stuff, but.
Yeah, I think he does that. But Sorry.
Well, I think sometimes when you have manipulators, it's weird when you come across some that are spiritual or are religious, or they can seem to articulate these concepts really well, and they might even seem to sincerely embrace them, but yet they don't internalize it. And I think it's just they're missing fundamental building blocks of their personality, and that's why. But also sometimes, it's sort of like the saying goes, the best hiding spot for evil is behind good.
Yep.
And they go to church, they are into Reiki, they spiritual, religious stuff, they volunteer, they seem like a really great person, but it's just, maybe it's their way of trying to either convince themselves that they're a good person, or they're using it to try to convince others that they're a good person. I mean, John Wayne Gacy used to dress like a clown and and do kids parties, and his whole community loved him, and he was a serial killer, a really vicious, horrible serial killer. And that was his mask of coming across like, this wonderful man. And so I think the point is, it's important that we pay attention to how people treat us. So
Right.
I often talk about, it's important that we look at actions over words, because talk is cheap. But also it can be confusing if a person has this a variety of actions. Some actions really point to they're a really great person. They volunteered, they seem to be really caring, they go to church, these kinds of things. But if other actions aren't in alignment with that, like just somebody was saying in the chat that their ex was saying that they're Christian, but then when nobody's looking, they're lying and cheating and stealing. Well, they might have accepted Jesus as their savior, but they're not in tune with God.
They
Their
can't
actions
practice what they preach.
They
at
don't
all.
practice.
Yeah.
They're not in alignment
Exactly.
with morals and values. And so it's
Yeah.
important for us to see that kind of stuff. If a person's got really relationship busting behavior, to not gloss over that and then focus on everything that they're doing right. Like, that's where deal breakers come into play.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Or it's far easier for them to see your mistakes compared to their own mistakes and ways that they're not following, the Bible or God teachings.
Usually that's distraction tactics. Look over here so we don't have to see what's wrong with me.
Yeah. I mean,
Really?
none of that, the teaching of Christianity will make any sense or give you any result if there is no love, like a genuine love at the foundation of it. So
That's a really great point.
That's
And I
it.
think
Yes.
a lot of really manipulative people, especially when it comes to religion, and maybe even more so with Christianity, it's like it's this child mentality of God is like, when you're a kid, you run to base and you're like, base, you can't touch me, I'm safe. They treat God like that, like, oh, I found God. Base, I'm forgiven for everything.
They hide
Nobody
behind
can
it.
judge me, only God, but I accepted God, so therefore I'm good. And that's such an immature understanding of God or of life. I mean, or their own behavior. It's just bizarre. And yeah, so I think it's consistent action of normal people aren't a radically different person when no one else is looking. And I think that's important to realize, to see behavior clearly.
Yep. Because without
Well,
love and godly teachings, it has almost zero debt at all.
we could
You're
have a
right
live
about
stream
that.
about the religion one time. That would be fun.
That would
Yeah.
be interesting.
Maybe a little controversial though.
Yeah, but you know what? I think this kind of stuff, it exists in every religion out there. I know.
Yes.
I was shocked when I came across it in Buddhism.
Mhm.
And even researching like the history of Buddhism, I just, it never ceases to amaze me as to how naive I can be. And
No,
Oh my gosh.
religion is used to, I'm sorry, religion is often, any religion was used to explain the wrongdoings of people. it's just such a great, thing to point your finger at. It's just awesome. Every
Well,
religion already.
Well, just like immature understandings, like with Buddhism, I was reading I don't know if I was watching a movie or reading some book about the different Dalai Lamas that they choose, these little boys that they choose at a young age, and then they go away from their family and then they train. And the sexual abuse is really high, and how these abusers were able to justify their behavior by just kind of being on the fringes of what they considered to be acceptable. But it's like the mental gymnastics that a person must do in order to convince themselves that their behavior, that outrageous, hurtful behavior like that is somehow okay. It just baffles me. And it blew my mind that would exist within Buddhism, when there's so much about kind of developing a healthy ego, releasing your ego. It's kind of the eightfold path and all of these things about taking, correct action and respecting others. And it blew my mind that monks could even engage in something so twisted and vile. But I think so it exists in every single religion, and it's unfortunate.
You
I
just
think
made my
anything can be
day.
used for uplifting, loving purposes, or the exact opposite. It's
Yeah.
comes down to
Well,
what the person's intentions are.
I love you saying that, because that just takes us back to the point that it's up to you how you will use what happened to you, what's in front of you. Like all of it, the externals are there and will be there and were there always, and it's up to you, like how you gonna use this and in make it work in your life, and what you're gonna do with it. It's up to you. You are the one that is in power. That sounds kind of crazy, but you are in power to make those choices.
I totally agree with you. That's exactly what I think too.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great insight, because if the core of us, what we put out into the world, can really only be as healthy as who we are in that moment. And it's so important for us to develop a good relationship with ourselves, so we can have a good relationship with others, so things don't get so skewed and twisted like this. And so yeah, that was good. Well, okay, so are we done with the book?
Yep, I think
Recap?
forgiving was the last. That was the last chapter I had. There
Okay.
was a wrap up at the end after that, but
Can I just give a little, I put it in the chat, but for those who are worrying about doing this book, if you start in the first chapter and you actually follow the exercises, like how they are designed, you can and space them out, because some of the exercises you can do like for a week before you move to the next part. Like you actually take your time and you don't move until you're ready. So I think it doesn't matter where you are right now, even if your experience of your self-worth is really low. This is a great book to go for, go and start, and just start in the chapter 1. Don't go to the chapter 20 right away. Start chapter 1 and go slowly from the beginning.
Don't skip ahead. Start at the beginning and be gentle. Be gentle on you. And that's the first act of self-care is to allow yourself to be gentle with how you work through all this.
And the chapter about dieting and its importance, I think it's like it wants you to journal 14 days. So plenty of time.
What was it? They want you to go for 14 days?
They want you to record everything that you eat for 14 days. Let me figure out what chapter it is.
We got you, Dana. You didn't do it.
Yeah, I did skip over that chapter. Yes, this is true.
If it makes you feel better, I also skipped over it when I originally thought I was covering that part. I said, yeah, no thanks.
Me too.
Yeah, guilty.
Nope. Not quite ready for that.
That's so funny that
Well, okay, so to recap for those that are questioning which book we're talking about, we are talking about the Self-Esteem Workbook by Glenn Schiraldi, and this is our monthly book club. We do this the last Thursday of every month. It's at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And next month, we are going to be discussing The Tao of Fully Feeling, and that's by Pete Walker, who is fantastic. His first book on healing from CPTSD was amazing. So I would imagine that this one is as well. So I hope you guys join us next month. And as always, everybody, just lots of love to you guys. You are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can heal from this. So take care, and we'll
Shay, come
see
on.
you soon.
Come on, Shay.
Come on.
Gotta get with the times.
Hey, right there over the heart.
Go the program.
Yes, you do. Yay. Okay. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you, Shay,
Bye.
James,
Thank you.
Renata, for being here. I appreciate your insights as always, and
Thank
I
you.
appreciate your time. So thank you.
Good night.
Okay.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Happy New Year.